Okay, welcome once again. In this section, we're going to be look at Photoshop panels and then tools. Okay, in Photoshop CC 2023. Okay, earlier we saw an introduction to the Photoshop interface. We saw how we can customize our workspace for our own personal use. We saw how we can add tools that are not in the toolbox. Okay, we saw how we can actually work around our workspace to suit what we want to do. Okay, so in this section or in this tutorial, we're going to be looking at the tools in detail and how we can dock our panels, okay, for use in Photoshop. Great. So now let's start with the tools. Now on the menu bar, we can see quite a lot of menu items, from file to edit to image to layer to type to select, filter, 3D view, plugins, and window. Now on the window, we actually have a lot of items there. These are all the panels in Photoshop. So any panel that we want in Photoshop, for now you can see that I have about 2 panels that are active. Okay, so I have 2 active panels, which is what, my character here and then my layers panel also here. So that is why you have what, those panels selected or ticked. Okay, now my frame, my application frame is actually the interface, everything you see. So that is my application frame, and then my options bar is what is here, so it's also active, and then my toolbox is also what, active here. Okay, so if I should scroll down, then I can get untitled, which is what, the document I'm currently working on. Okay, so under window here, you can see arrange, where we can tile our documents. You can tile vertically or you can tile horizontally, depending on how you want to work in Photoshop. Now there are other options depending on what you are doing and then the kind of arrangement you want to do with your documents. Okay, so you can also consolidate, you can also float, depending on what you want. Now we have already seen workspace, so now I'll go to extensions, which are basically when you install a plugin in Photoshop. So I have 2 plugins installed here, so you can see that I have extensions. I have the beauty retouch and then the pixel jungler. So I can just open this, and this is just a plugin that I use for retouching pictures or images. So it takes some quite time to load, so to load. If I want the other one also, so I can go for pixel jungler also there, so I can switch in between what the load. So this is an example of a plugin I have here, which will enable me to do some frequency separations and use dodge and bend method in retouching, depending on which kind of retouching you want to do. Okay, so this is an example of one plugin in Photoshop. The jungler too is also there, which is another form of a retouching, okay, plugin, which I can use to do whatever retouching I want. Now if you want to do there are manual ways of learning how to retouch if you want to, okay, but as I say, it's not our focus, so we'll not go much into that. This is just to show you how it works like. So that is docked there also. Now under Windows also, you can see that there is 3D. So if I select 3D, it picks up what, the 3D panel for me. Okay, so this is how you can dock a panel. Now if I want to take it off, probably I don't need the 3D, I can just click on it and drag it out. So if I drag it out and I extend this, now it allows the panel to float. So I can float it anywhere I want. I can move it, I can dock it whichever area I want. So if I want it this way, I can dock it there. If I want it downwards, also I can dock it downward, depending on how you want it to be. If I want it separate, to stand on it over here, so I can still do that here. So it depends on how you want to customize your panels for your own use. So if I don't want it, I don't need it, I just click on it, hold on the mouse, and then drag it out. Then it will float for me. Now you can see some options here. So that gives you further options to what you can do with that particular panel, because we don't have any 3D elements. You see that they are all not active. So if we had a 3D element there, then we can see these elements or options quite active, so that we can use it for whatever that we want to do. Okay, great. So that is an example of how we can activate or deactivate, or dock, I should say, a panel, or undock a panel. So if I want, probably, let's try another example. Let's say we are working on maybe some design. We will need maybe some color palette. So I can select my color palette. Now if I select the color palette, you realize that it activates it here, which is already docked there. So I can bring it out. So it brings all my palette out. Now I can select this, dock it whichever way I want. I will not do this because it's already here for me. Okay, so I can do this and I get my color picker already. So I don't need to have a color panel, okay, also there for me. So it depends on what you really want to do and how you want it. If you want to use swatches, you can go with swatches. It gives you a template of colors that you can work with if you want to. Okay, so it has all these color schemes that if you want to select a particular color, you're finding it difficult to get some color blends, okay, you can get the swatches, which allows you to get all this. So if I come to my window, you realize that my swatches is active here. Okay, good. So I don't need the whole panel. Okay, so what I'll do is to right click on it, and then I can close the group, or I can close just one. So if I close, I'll close only the swatches. If I close the group, then I close all the three panels here. Okay, so I want to close the group, so I close the group and everything goes off. I have this also, which is layer comps. I don't need it, so I can drag it out and then extend it. Now I can float it and then close that also. Okay, so depending on what I need, I add it. If I don't want it, I just take it out. So these are what you call panels, okay, in Photoshop, and you can see them docked on either side of your interface. It can be up also, it can be anywhere, okay, all sides, depending on where you want to position it for your work. Okay, as I said, it depends on how you want to customize your interface for your own perfect use. Okay, so that is about panels here. Now what you have to know, that each panel has its specific use, and it has the kind of options that you work with it. Okay, every panel varies depending on what you want to do. Okay, so depending on what you are doing, and then the kind of panel to select, okay, and then you work with that. Okay, great. So let's move on. Now we have seen panels. Okay, so let's move on to the tools. Now the first tool we have here in Photoshop is called the Move tool. Now you could realize that my interface, or the tools I have here, I can have the hidden tools here. Why? Because I am working in a different mode, so I need to organize those tools here. So I have switched to tutorials. Now I want to switch to Ernest, okay, so that I can have all my tools back. If I don't want that, then I've shown you from our earlier session how we can add the tools. So all these tools here are hidden. Okay, so we can add them back or access them from here, or we go to edit, we go to toolbar, and then we have them here. Okay, so we can just drag and drop them in, but I have already done it from a different workspace, so I will not take us back through that again. So I just go to my workspace and I switch workspace, so that I have all those tools already back for me. Okay, good. So now the first tool is the Move tool. Now we explained that the Move tool can be used for selection. It is basically a selection tool. Okay, now that is what Photoshop tells us, but it goes beyond that. The Move tool can be used for other things. One, okay, is the selection that we already know. Two, it can be used to position. Okay, three, you can use it to rotate, you can use it to resize, and then you can use it to manipulate or distort an object. So depending on what you want to use for, you can use this to do these 5 major things: selection, rotation, positioning, or move. We can use it to resize, and then we can use it to distort or manipulate an object or text, okay, depending on what you want to do. Okay, so these 5 major uses applies to what the move tool in Photoshop. Now, just underrated is what the artboard tool. We already learned that the artboard allows us to add more documents or pages to our more pages to our document. Okay, so if for instance I'm working on a website, okay, and I need to add more pages to that same document, then I can use the artboard tool to add those pages. But from experience, it is inappropriate to use the tool to draw an artboard like this, because you might not get it perfect. Okay, if you draw, then it means that you can also use the width and height options here to set whichever same width that you have here in the previous one. I will not go this way because it will give me a lot of work. So what I will do is to make sure I double click this to select, or I click on the menu or the name of the artboard in the layer panel, or with that selected, I can double click the name here, artboard, and then it activates this for me. Okay, so I have plus here, plus here, plus here, plus here. It means that I can add pages to that document. Okay, so if I want to add and that is active, then I click on the plus. It adds a new document or a new page to that for me. I add, and I add. So I have 5 pages created. So now this gives me room to create extra pages for whatever work that I want to do, than having different documents, okay, for the same work. Okay, so I don't need to open different documents here, but I have one document with different pages in that same particular document. Okay, so that is how we can add our artboard to our document. Okay, so I would undo this, and then what I will do to add is to double click here, and then it activates the artboard tool. So you realize that the move tool has changed to the artboard tool. So I can add a page. Okay, if I want it down, I can add it downwards. If I want it here, I can add it here, and depending on how you want to organize your interface or the work you're about doing. Okay, so now I've done away with all those artboards, so let's move on. So that if you double click on the name artboard here, then it activates the artboard tool for us to add. If you look at the options bar, you can see more options. I can also use here to add the pages if I want to. So if I click on the plus here, okay, it can also allow me to add that, and I add, or I just go back there. Okay, great. So back to the move tool. Now the next tool is called the marquee tool. Now the marquee tool is another selection tool which allows us to select, okay, or draw objects. Okay, now you cannot use this tool here, okay, to draw without applying or creating what we call a layer in Photoshop. We'll actually come to layers in detail after this lesson. Okay, so I'll use the rectangular marquee tool. If I want to draw, I just use a rectangular marquee tool, and then I draw a rectangle. So if I click a point and drag, then I draw a rectangle. Now you could notice that it creates somewhat dashed lines there for me, which looks like they are moving. Okay, these moving dashes are called matching ants. Okay, these matching ants. Now it looks like it's moving, but it's just an illusion. Okay, so it's not moving actually. So the matching ants shows that a selection has been made. So with the selection made, what we do is to make sure that we create a layer in Photoshop. Now, how do we create a layer in Photoshop? There are 3 basic ways you can create a layer in Photoshop. Now the first way is plus N, then I get new layer. Okay, so you see that it's layer 2. Now the good thing about this is that it gives you options of whatever you want to do, whether you want to mark it with a color, you want to change a mode, you want to give it an opacity, okay, you want to create a clipping mask from what a previous what layer, or whatever way you want it. You can also rename the layer here before you create it. So it depends on which way you want to do that. Okay, now that is the first way. The other way is to go to layer on the menu item, so layer on the menu bar, and I select new, then I can select new layer. So here you can see that the shortcut is there, control what, shift what, N. Okay, so that gives us what, a new layer. Or I come down here at the layer panel here, the bottom part here, there are some items which will come through in the next lesson, but you see new layer down there, which allows us to what, to create a new layer on top. So here it creates the layer directly for us. Okay, good. So now with this layer created, then we can go ahead and then what, apply whatever we want to what, to apply to what, this particular object that is selected. Okay, now before we can do any application, it means that we need another tool to work to do that. So we'll rely on the tool called the paint bucket tool. Now the paint bucket tool allows us to apply fills, I mean colors, to what, a particular selection that we want to what, to fill. So the paint bucket tool is there. The shortcut is for Gene. So I click on it. So it's a bucket tool. If you click and hold, you realize it's in the middle. So I click and hold that, and then I would have to select a color. Okay, so I select the top white color here is my foreground color, and then the down one is what, is my background color. So these colors can be what, toggled. So I can what, switch the colors here. Okay, so if I click on this, I can toggle the colors depending on what I want. So because my background is already white, I would prefer to what, to choose what, or switch the red up. If I want to change it, I can double click inside the white, and then it allows me what, to select the color I want. If I double click inside what, the red, it also allows me to what, to sample that particular color that I want to what, to have. So, and I click on OK, then it's done. Now if that is selected, okay, with the layer also active, then I can apply the fill that I want. So now you see that I have my color what, filled. Okay, now if it's filled, then you can go back to what, to your move tool, because the work of the paint bucket is now done. So you don't have to what, to be on the paint bucket again. You change to what, to move tool. So anytime you are done doing whatever you want to do with a particular tool, you have to switch to what, the move tool. Please note that. Okay, so now you can see that our margin ant is still active on that object. Okay, it must not be so. Now if you are done with the filling, or if you are done with the selection, you must take off your matching ant off, or else it's going to affect your work. Okay, so how do we take off the matching ant off? So we select menu. Okay, on the menu bar we select deselect. Okay, and then we take it off, or we can use the shortcut Control D. So if I press Control D on the keyboard, it takes it off. Or I come to select here and then select deselect, and then it takes off my matching ant for me. So now I can click on my object and then what, select it. So we saw that from the first tool, which is the move tool, we said that it can be used to position, it can be used to resize, it can be used to rotate, it can be used to distort or what, manipulate. So I can use my tool here. If I click the side here, I can use it to resize what, my object. So this is the first. I can hold here. I can use it to also rotate what, my object if I want to. Okay, I can use it to rotate it. I can use it to what, to position it where I want it to be. So I can position my object, increase the size depending on how I want it to what, to be. Okay, can do whatever I want to do to it. If I hold Control on the keyboard, okay, I can what, distort it or change the size depending on how I want to what, to manipulate my object. Or if I press Control T, which is already active here, I can just click on the warp tool here, and then it gives me room to extra manipulate my object, okay, to create a shape that probably I want to have. Okay, So it depends on how you want to do your stuff, and then you manipulate your object accordingly to how you want it. Okay, so if I am done, I need to what? If this is the shape I want, then I can click approve or press enter to what? To confirm my shape. So when that is done, this is the shape I want to what? To create. Okay, so perfect. So that is how we can use the move tool to also do other things depending on how we want to do that. Okay, good. Now there is a point of pivot also here, which allows us to what? To rotate on what? A particular pivot. So if I point of rotation, I select it, then you realize that now the object is rotated along what? That particular point. Okay, so if your point of rotation is not active or you don't see this point, then you can take this. If I untick this, you see that now I don't see my point of rotation now. So if I take this here, then it gives me my point of rotation. Then I can position it whichever angle I want. If I put it here, then it will rotate around that what? Angle. If I bring it here, then my object will be rotated along what? That particular what? Point. Okay, so this is how we can what? Do that, if that is what you want. Okay, good. So let's move on to the next tool. So I want to use another tool. So probably the what I'm doing here is to hide my object. So I want to hide it. So I click on that and hide it. Now I can change the layout of my object if I want to. So maybe I want it the other way. Let's say I want it portrait now. So I can just go to image, and then I want to rotate this 90 degrees clockwise, so that I change this to portrait. Now I am doing this because of what I want to do now with the other tool, which is the elliptical marquee tool. Now I want to use this tool as another example. Okay, so I want to draw a huge ellipse, okay, like this across board, and then I can drag this upward. Okay, now I will create a new layer again, and then I apply what? A color here. Okay, so now the color is applied, and I can go to select, and then I deselect. So I take off what? My matching ant. So I have objects like this. Note that this is on what? A separate layer. Okay, so I create this there. So with this created, I can still go ahead and do other things to it. So if I duplicate this, if I want to duplicate this, I press Ctrl J. So if I press Ctrl J, I'm able to duplicate the layer. Okay, or I can hold on Alt and then drag this out this way, and then it duplicates it for me. So I have what? A second copy of what? Of that same layer. Now, to enable me see a difference between the two, I want to just apply or reduce a layer opacity. So opacity is basically to make something transparent. If it's opaque, it means that we can't see through it. So by making it reducing the opacity on that image or object, you are thereby making it what? Transparent. Okay, so that is what we mean by opacity. Later I'll explain the fill down there when it comes to text. Okay, good. So I'll reduce the opacity here, and then now you realize that I can easily see the difference here. So I'm going to increase the size, and then maybe rotate this a little bit just to create what I want to do. So maybe I have something like this, and then I'll duplicate the same thing again. This time I'm using the shortcut Ctrl J. So if I press Ctrl J here, it's duplicated, and then I want to rotate it the other way, the opposite way. Now I can have what? This also down here for me. So I have this also created. So you can see that I have another design coming up this way. So you can do this, do that, depending on how you want our design to look like. So another shortcut, and then I can position it a different way, rotate it a little bit, push it in a bit, and then I think this is quite okay for me. So I can use this to create a host of designs, you know, depending on how I want to create my background. Okay, so instead of going to download abstract backgrounds from online, you can create your own stuff depending on what you want, and then you can easily use it for your designs without going to download what? Stock images for your background design. Okay, so that is another way I can use the same tool. And that also there are other tools, which is if you want a single column or a single row. For instance, if you want to do a single line or a single column, you can still use that. But note that you still have to create a layer before you apply those tools. Okay, good. Now we have seen one way of using the tool, as in the drawing aspect of it. Let's look at how we can use that tool to also select images for design. So I'm going to go into my local host here and then pick a certain image. Let me get a better image, and then yes, so let's use our vice chancellor. It is for our university, so let's use our vice chancellor. So I'm going to pick the image of our vice chancellor. Okay, so this is our vice chancellor. Some of you don't know him, so now you know him. So this is our vice chancellor. We want to use his picture for the design we are about doing. So now the first thing I'll do is that even when I was dropping the image, you realize that I didn't drop the picture in this document. Now I dropped the image on the tab here. So that will create a different document for me. If I go ahead and drop it inside here, then it will put the image inside this document. This is not what we want. Okay, this is not what we want to do. So I don't want us to do this. So I want us to put it on a different tab so that we can have our way with it before we do whatever that we want to do. Okay, so I will go ahead and delete this. Now what we want is to select it from somewhere and come and drop it inside the design that we are doing. So I'll go for the marquee tool, the rectangular marquee tool, and then I'll draw a perfect circle. So how do I draw a perfect circle? To draw a perfect circle with any of the drawing tools, or a perfect square, you hold on Shift on the menu bar, and then you click a point, and you drag. So I hold on Shift, I click a point, and then I drag it. So it creates my perfect circle for me. Then now I can pick the move tool now, and then pick my image out, and then I drop it on the tab here, and then it shows this, and I bring it in here. Note that you don't drop on the tab, you just bring it in and come and drop on here. Then I can resize my image, position it where I want it. Okay, now if it's okay, then I press approve, and then it does that for me. So here, this is done. I can go ahead and draw a circle over it by creating a new layer. Draw a new circle here this way, and then I fill it with color. So, or let's change the color. Fill with color here. Now I remove my matching ants. Go to select, and then deselect. Now you could realize that it has covered my image, so I need to change the order of the image. So to do that, I just click and hold this, and then I drag it downwards so that it changes the order, and then I can resize this a little bit in so that it fits perfectly for me. So if this is how I want it, I can do it. There are other ways I can still do this, but because we are using the tool, I could have used a layer effect, stroke it, and then do the same thing. But because we are using the marquee tool, that is what I use this approach. Okay, so this is how we can also use the marquee tool to select images or objects from from its background. Okay, good. So let's move on to the other tools. Now there is a lasso tool which is quite irregular, which works in a similar way. Okay, so that one allows you to draw irregular shapes. So if you want to draw irregular shapes, you can use that tool to draw, or free form I should say. You can use the lasso tool to do that. And then the polygonal lasso allows you to select images with straight edges. So if I want to draw something or select images from straight edges, okay, I can use the polygonal lasso to do that. And then we have the magnetic lasso tool, which works like a magnet. Okay, so for instance, if I want to select this image out of its background, then I can click on the point, then I move along the edges of that image. Now what is happening is that you could realize that the tool is automatically highlighting the outlines of my image. Okay, so I just do that, move along the edges slowly and smoothly, and it does that selection for me. So I'll go around it, and then if it's okay, and then I just move faster. You realize that it's picking on other things, so it picks a color, and then I just move on with that. I can move in and out, and then off I go. Then where I started, I come and end there. Okay, so I end here, and then you see that now I have my selection out, and then I can move the image out and then use it for whatever I want to do. Okay, so you can see it gives me quite not a bad kind of selection. It's not bad, but it's not the perfect tool for this. Okay, so there are more advanced tools that can do a perfect job for us than this. So that is one way we can use it to select our objects, okay, or images. Now there's another one, which is the quick object selection tool, which allows you to highlight around the object you want to select. So I just draw, okay, around the object I want to select, and then what it does is that it analyzes the image itself and picks out the image from its background. So now yes, it's done. So you see how it has picked it out neatly for me, so I can pick this out and then move it towards the place I want to use it. So see that my selection is neatly done. But if you look at the edge closely, you see that it has some white spots and edges along the image. So these are some of the things you may want to avoid, okay, because of some of these tools. Okay, so it doesn't seem like the perfect tool for us. So let's try another tool. Okay, so I deselect and then I move on to another tool, which is the quick selection tool. So the quick selection tool also allows you to do the same kind of selection, but in this case you click a point and then you move along the areas you want to select, and then it does the selections for you. So if it's done, it's on it's on reverse. So I go to select, and then I select inverse. Now it selects the image out rather for me, so I can pull it out, take it there, and then use it. So this is also not quite okay, but I can tell you that because of the kind of selection we are doing, so it's quite difficult getting these things in a perfect way. Okay. So let's look at the magic wand. Okay, the magic wand also has the same kind of selection, but this one works just at a click. So at a click and it's done. Now on the options bar, the magic wand has what you call tolerance. Okay, tolerance. So here you can increase or decrease the tolerance. Now I'll explain with both sides. So because of this explanation, let me do this. So let me just pick this and drag the image rather and drop it here. It's just for demonstration purposes so that you can see the difference. Okay, good. So I approve this selection here. Now if I drop it in, you realize that my image becomes a smart object. Okay, so I would right click on it and then I rasterize this layer to convert it into a bitmap. Then it takes it off from a smart object. Okay, now with this done, I go for the magic wand, but I'll duplicate this image twice so that you can see what I want to demonstrate here. So I press Ctrl J, okay, or drag it and then add plus, and then it does duplicate the same thing, or I use Ctrl J, or I just click this image, select Alt, okay, and then drag it out. So many ways I can duplicate. Okay, So I can drag it and drop it on the plus here, and then it duplicates it for us. So I have what? 2 of that. So I'm going to hide 1. So I'll hide the top one now. Now I want to demonstrate the magic wand with the default tolerance, which is 32. So I select it. Make sure that particular layer is selected. I select this, and then what? I just press backspace or delete, and then it takes it off for us. Now I can have what? Deselect, and then you realize that it's quite a neat one, but you can see some small at the edges here, okay, that we need to do away with. So now that is the 32. Now let's activate the second one. Now I'll change the 32 tolerance to probably, let's say, 90, okay, percent tolerance. I press enter. Now with this done, I click on that same white area and I press delete. Now let's hide this one, the old one. Now look at it. If I bring the old one there, you can see the white edges coming up. If I hide it, see that now those edges are off. So you see that the 91 does a much more cleaner job for us than what the 32. So the higher the tolerance, the more better selection you have along the edges than what the lower tolerance. Okay, so note that. So you might want to adjust your tolerance depending on the kind of what selections you want. There are situations where you have a higher tolerance and then it might end up bleeding into what the shade. For instance, if this shade has what a bleed somewhere here, it will end up entering into what the white shade, which you might want to what to avoid. Okay, so you might check out for those things if you have what such bleeds of the background into what the shirts or the dress of what the image. Okay, so let's move on with that. So that is how we can use what the marquee tool. Now the next tool is the crop tool. Now the crop tool in Photoshop is basically used for what? For resizing the whole document itself. You don't want to do that here unless you want to probably change the size of what of the document. Okay, or an image, depending on whichever way or you want to use it. Okay, good. But the crop tool here is not actually used for the cropping. This is the kind of cropping that we talk about, okay, as designers. So if you are removing the image out of a background, it is not cropping, it is what selection. Okay, so here if you are cropping, it means that you are resizing the document what size, the canvas, okay, size. Okay, so note the difference here. So that is how we can use the crop tool. So if I pick the crop tool this way, then I can what adjust what the document size. Okay, good. Now the next tool I'll talk about there is the perspective tool and the slice tool. Now I jump this tool because we'll come back to them when we are designing for the web and exporting it. So the slice tool will jump it, the perspective tool will not have use of it in the UI. Okay, so we'll jump that. Now the frame tool allows us to frame a picture. So if I want to frame this, I just pick it, make sure the image is selected. Now it frames this image, okay, as to how we want it, and then if it's a passport, whichever way you want it, it does the framing for you. So this is how we can use the frame tool if you want. You just have to select the object, or you just leave it and then you draw around the object that you want to select, and it does what the framing for you. Okay, so this can also be what adjusted depending on how you want it. Okay, so you can adjust it, you can do whatever you want to do. Now if the tool is selected, remember that you can switch. If you want the ellipse one, you can switch to that. If you want the rectangle one or rectangular one, you switch to that. It depends on how you want to use the tool. Okay, so it's up to you. Great. Now after that comes the eyedropper tool. The eyedropper tool allows us to sample colors. So if you want to sample a particular color, you can sample the 3D material. If you are working with 3D, there's a material you want to sample to use for the 3D object, then you can sample that also. Okay, now the color sampler tool samples and then gives you detailed information on the colors. Okay, if you want to do that, you can do that. The ruler, note and count tools, we won't be using these tools, that's why I'm not demonstrating them. Okay, so we will not have need of them, aside maybe the eyedropper tool, which allows you to sample colors depending on how you want it. So if I sample this color from the dress, you realize that it changes color from here. So if I sample, it changes color depending on what I want to do. Okay, good. So that is that. So let's move on to the next two that I want us to look at. Okay, so with these I'll get some image and then we can demonstrate how this works like. Okay, so let's get another image, okay, that we want to use for this. Okay, so I get an image. I want an image with blemishes, a little bit of blemishes. So I'm going to use my sister here, okay, and then use that image. It's just for academic purposes, please. So I'm using it to demonstrate how we can use the tool to remove these blemishes on her face. You see, so I want to use the first tool under that is the spot healing tool. So now first let's unlock the layer and then zoom on the face. Now these spots are there, so I can right click here and then reduce the size here and then reduce my hardness because I don't want my blend to be very hard. Okay, so I want it a soft blend, so I reduce the hardness and then maybe the spacing in between I can increase or decrease depending on what I want. So I increase the size a little bit. What you have to notice that you have to make sure the size of the nib is bigger than what the spot. So another way I can do that is to use the curly brackets here, so I can use the left curly bracket to reduce, the right to increase the size. So I have to make sure it's bigger than the spot. Then I can click around it and then it does the healing for me. So this is how the spot healing can be used to do away with to blemishes around the image. Okay, good. Now that is how it works. So let's look at the healing brush itself. Now the healing brush tool allows us to rather sample. So if I want to use that, I have to sample a particular spot and use it to cover up that place that has the blemish. So I just click Alt on the keyboard, hold on Alt on the keyboard, and then I sample an area and then I cover that. Okay, I sample and I use it to move over the area I want to cover. Okay, so you just have to sample an area. Okay, it has hardness, so I have to change that. So let's undo it because I can see some lines here. So hardness was there, so let's reduce the hardness there. Now I can sample here, and then now I can move along just to make the edges quite softer. Okay, good. So this looks quite better now for us. Okay, great. Okay, good. So let's assume this is done. So I'm just assuming that this is done. So now there is a heat map here, heat mark, sorry. So I'll use that to use the other two here. So I use the patch tool and then I just draw around that particular area and then I drag it out and then I can heal that particular area so that it blends in, rather you don't see it like a heat map coming in so much. Okay, so let's do this also and then I move it out so that it blends in well. Now you can see something also here, so let's work around this also. Drag it off and then it does the healing process perfectly for me. So I can use this to heal, work on all these parts that I want to do. The same applies to the content aware move to The red eye, if there's a red eye there, there's no red eye here, so you just draw around it and then it does that for us. Okay, great. In our next session, we're going to look at another set of tools that will help us in our work.